3 weeks after my wife's funeral, I gave her old laptop to an international student. Before I made it through my front door, he texted me. I found hidden files. Be alone. Whatever you do, don't tell your daughter or son-in-law. My car keys slipped from my hand. They hit the concrete beside my shoe with a sharp little crack. I stood there in the driveway staring down at them, like they belonged to somebody else. The November air had that damp Ohio chill that worked its way through a jacket. Across the street, Tom Hensley was dragging 2 trash cans back toward his garage. He raised one hand. You all right, Ray? I bent down too quickly and my right knee complained. Fine, I called back. Just getting old in public. Tom laughed and went inside. I picked up the keys and looked at the message again. The student's name was Kieran Thapa. I had met him 45 minutes earlier at a Panera near Ohio State. He was 26, from Nepal, and studying cybersecurity. That was about all I knew. Carol had known more. My wife had volunteered twice a month at a community learning center in Columbus, helping people fill out job applications, insurance forms, and citizenship paperwork. She had mentioned Kieran a few times. Smart young man, she once told me. Very patient, you'd like him. At the time, I had been half listening while trying to fix the garbage disposal. That was one of the things grief did. It took old, ordinary conversations and turned them into evidence. That morning, I had placed Carol's laptop in a padded grocery bag because I could not find the case. It was a silver MacBook, a few years old, with a faint coffee stain near the trackpad. Kieran had looked at it, then at me. Mr. Mercer, this is too much. It's a computer, not a kidney. My old one can probably be repaired. Then repair it and give it to somebody else. He smiled, but still looked uncomfortable. I only need something that turns on. At my age, I told him, that's about all I ask for myself. He laughed, so did I. It was the first time I had heard my own laugh since Carol died. Now I stood outside our brick house in Dublin with the phone in one hand and the keys in the other, wondering what she had left behind. I went inside and locked the door. The kitchen looked exactly the way it had when she was alive, which was both comforting and cruel. Her gardening gloves were still on the small bench by the back door. A bottle of hand lotion sat beside the sink. 2 bananas were in the fruit bowl because I still shopped like there were 2 people in the house. I set the phone on the table. Then it rang. Kieran. I answered immediately. What did you find? His voice was calm, but not casual. I think I should explain carefully. That usually means I'm not going to enjoy the explanation. When I started preparing the computer, I reset the operating system. After that, a separate storage partition appeared. It was encrypted. I pulled out Carol's chair and sat down. What does that mean in normal English? It means someone created a hidden section of the hard drive. It would not appear during regular use. Did you open it? No, not fully. A message appeared first. I waited. It said, for Ray Mercer, stop if he is not present. The refrigerator hummed behind me. I could hear the old clock in the hallway ticking. What else? There were instructions to make 2 protected copies before opening anything, and another warning. What warning? That you should not contact Natalie or Brent until you had seen the files and spoken to an attorney. My grip tightened around the phone. Natalie is my daughter. I understand. She handled most of Carol's paperwork, the funeral home, insurance calls, hospital bills. I am not accusing her of anything. It sounds like you are. No, sir. I'm telling you what your wife wrote. That stopped me. Kieran did not fill the silence. I appreciated that. I looked toward the framed picture on the counter. Carol and Natalie at Christmas 2 years earlier, both wearing ridiculous red sweaters. Natalie was leaning into her mother laughing. My thumb moved toward her name on the screen. Then I remembered the hospital. Carol had been in a private room at Riverside Methodist. The blinds were half closed and rain had been running down the window. Brent came in carrying a blue folder. Just routine paperwork, he said. Insurance and estate stuff. I can walk Ray through it. Carol had been weak that day. Her voice barely carried across the bed. You didn't sign what he brought last month, did you? I had squeezed her hand. No, honey, there wasn't anything to sign. Brent gave a soft laugh. She's had a lot of medication. Carol looked directly at him. She did not look confused. He removed the folder from the room 5 minutes later. At the time, I had told myself she was frightened. Sick people worried. Dying people said strange things. Standing in my kitchen, I realized Brent had answered too quickly. Kieran, I said, where are you now? At the Thompson Library. I'll be there in 30 minutes. You should bring someone you trust. I thought you said not to tell my family. Someone else? An attorney, perhaps? I don't have one. Your wife listed a name in the instructions. Marianne Doyle. I knew the name. Carol had used Marianne years earlier when we updated our wills. I looked at the kitchen clock. I'm coming alone. The drive back to Columbus took longer than usual. Traffic crawled near the Route 315 exit, and every red light gave me more time to think. Maybe Carol had hidden medical records. Maybe she had been worried about identity theft. Maybe there was a reasonable explanation for all of it. I repeated those possibilities until they stopped sounding reasonable. Kieran met me inside the library near a bank of elevators. He wore a gray Ohio State sweatshirt and held the laptop against his chest. You came fast, he said. I ignored several laws. I hope only traffic laws. That depends on what's in that computer. He led me to a small study room with glass walls. A whiteboard covered one side. Two students were arguing quietly over a math problem in the hallway. Kieran set the laptop on the table and connected an external drive. I made 2 copies, he said. One is here, one is in a secure locker. You really took her instructions seriously. She helped me when she did not have to. How? He hesitated. I think she wanted you to hear that from her. A password prompt appeared. Below it was a clue. Asterisk, asterisk, the first place we called home. Then the year she arrived, asterisk, asterisk. I knew it immediately. Our first apartment had been on West 5th Avenue. Natalie was born in 1988. I typed the address number, then the year. The screen changed. A group of folders appeared. They were not neatly organized. Some had dates, some had question marks. One was labeled asterisk, asterisk, Brent asterisk, asterisk. Another said asterisk, asterisk, bank asterisk, asterisk. At the top was a folder named asterisk, asterisk, Ray. Start here, asterisk, asterisk. My hand stayed on the mouse. Kieran stood up. I can wait outside. No, my voice came out rough. Stay. I opened the folder. There was one video file. Carol appeared on the screen. She was sitting at our dining room table wearing the blue cardigan she used to keep over the back of her chair. Her face was thinner than I remembered. There were dark circles beneath her eyes. For several seconds, she just breathed. Then she looked into the camera. Ray, I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I reached forward and paused the video. My chest felt tight. Kieran turned his chair slightly away, giving me the privacy of not being watched. I pressed play again. I wasn't sure what I had, Carol said, and I knew if I told you too early, you would confront them before we understood what they were doing. She stopped and covered her mouth while she coughed. When she continued, her voice was weaker. Natalie and Brent have been collecting your financial information. I believe they're preparing documents that would give Natalie control over the house, the bank accounts, maybe more. I don't know how far it has gone. My first reaction was anger. Not at Natalie. At Carol. She had been dying, and she had carried this alone. She had looked at me across the dinner table and said nothing. Then I remembered the blue folder, Brent's quick smile, Natalie telling me I should not make major decisions while I was grieving. Carol leaned closer to the camera. They aren't waiting for you to die, Ray. She paused to catch her breath. They're trying to prove you can't take care of yourself while you're still alive. The video ended. The room felt smaller than it had a minute earlier. Kieran did not speak. I stared at the frozen black screen and thought about the woman who had shared my bed for 38 years, planning all of this while I kept telling her not to worry. Finally, I heard my own voice. What did they make you find out alone? For a while, neither of us moved. The library kept going around us. A cart squeaked somewhere beyond the glass wall. Somebody laughed near the elevators. A phone vibrated on the table in the next study room. Inside ours, it felt like the whole building had gone quiet. Kieran finally turned back toward me. Do you want to stop? No. You do not have to see everything today. If Carol thought I needed to see it, I'm seeing it. That sounded firm. I did not feel firm. I clicked back to the list of folders. The one marked *** Brent, property *** sat near the top. I opened it. The first image was a copy of my driver's license. Not a photograph taken from far away. A clean, flat image of both sides. I leaned closer. That was from after the funeral. Kieran looked at me. You remember? Natalie asked to photograph it. Said the funeral home needed identification for an insurance form. The next file held my social security number. Then 3 years of tax returns. I stared at the page showing my pension income, property taxes, and bank interest. Information I would not have handed to a stranger. Information my daughter had been able to access because Carol trusted her. I kept clicking. Each document felt less like a financial record and more like somebody opening drawers inside my house. Then I found the loan application. The amount was printed near the top. $410,000.*. Borrower, Raymond Mercer. Collateral, the property on Briarwood Lane. My home. I read the address 3 times. Kieran said, Mr. Mercer? There's a mistake. He did not argue. I scrolled to the last page. My signature was there. For half a second, relief went through me. There, I must have signed something and forgotten. Kieran brought up a scanned check from another folder and placed the 2 images side by side. The loan signature was smooth, almost elegant. The signature on my check tilted down and tightened near the end, the way it had since arthritis started bothering my right thumb. Kieran pointed without touching the screen. The spacing is different. I looked at my own hands. Give me some paper. He slid a yellow legal pad across the table. I took out the pen I kept clipped inside my jacket. It was one Carol had bought me because I was always stealing hers. I signed my name. The R came out too tall. The final letters shook. I tried again, pressing harder. The second one looked worse. Kieran placed the pad beside the screen. The forged version looked like my signature from 15 years earlier. I sat back. They improved my handwriting. It was meant to be a joke. Neither of us laughed. My hand had started trembling, so I placed the pen on the table before I dropped it. Below the loan documents was a presentation file. I opened it. A title appeared across a computer rendering of expensive townhouses. *** Mercer Grove, ***. At first, I thought Brent had used my family name to flatter us. Then Kieran advanced to the site plan. The center of the screen showed a curved entrance road, stone columns, trimmed grass, and a small decorative pond. I knew that shape. I had inspected enough development plans in my career to read one without a legend. My house was gone. The driveway became the entrance road. The kitchen and dining room sat beneath a turning lane. Carol's garden had been replaced by a landscaped traffic circle. I leaned toward the screen. No, Kieran looked at me. That's our backyard. I pointed to a row of evenly spaced trees. Right there. Carol planted peonies along that fence. 23 years. Every spring she'd complain they were too heavy and then refused to cut them back. The project description called the property an underutilized residential parcel. Underutilized. That house had raised a child, held Thanksgiving dinners, survived a flooded basement, 2 roof replacements in Carol's last months. Brent had turned it into empty land on a planning document. Worse, he had put our name on it. The Mercer family would appear to be donating its property to the future. What else is there? I asked. Kieran opened an audio folder. Most of the files were short clips with dates instead of names. One was almost 11 minutes long. He looked at me before playing it. Your wife may have recorded this without the others knowing. He play it. At first I heard dishes and cabinet doors. Then Brent's voice. He was in our kitchen. This isn't taking the house, he said. It's unlocking equity Ray isn't using, Natalie answered, but so quietly I had to lean closer. Dad paid for my college. He paid half the wedding. He covered the hospital bill when we couldn't. Exactly, he has always wanted to help us. That doesn't make the house ours. There was a long scrape like someone moving a chair. Brent's tone softened. You're making it sound ugly. We're trying to stabilize the company. Once Ridgeview closes, everything goes back. What if it doesn't close? It will. You said that about the Delaware project. That was different. Natalie sighed. I could picture her at the kitchen table, twisting the ring on her right hand the way she did when she was nervous. Then she asked the question that changed everything. How long before we can put everything back? 90 days, Brent told her. He said it quickly, like he had already practiced the answer. The recording continued with the sound of Carol coughing in another room. Then it stopped. I stared at the speaker icon. Natalie had known. Maybe she had not designed the plan. Maybe Brent had dressed it up in so many clean financial phrases that she had convinced herself it was temporary. But she had known they were taking something. My mind went backward. Natalie at 6, sitting on my shoulders during the 4th of July parade. Natalie at 17, calling me because her car would not start. Natalie at 32, crying in our kitchen because Brent's insurance had not covered as much of the hospital bill as they expected. I had written a check before she finished asking. I thought helping quickly was what fathers did. Maybe all I had taught her was that my answer would always be yes. Kieran paused the audio. You should take a break. I stood instead. The study room was too small. I walked out into the hallway and stopped near a window overlooking the campus. Students crossed the courtyard below carrying backpacks and coffee cups. Most of them looked young enough to still call their parents when something went wrong. My phone buzzed. Natalie. I let it ring. A message followed. Asterisk, asterisk. Just checking on you, Dad. Did you eat lunch? I read it twice. 3 weeks earlier, it would have felt loving. Now I wondered whether she was checking on me or checking whether I was still manageable. When I returned to the room, Kieran had opened another document. A draft petition for emergency guardianship. The heading included my full name. The words beneath it described a man I barely recognized. Confused, emotionally unstable, unable to manage finances, vulnerable to outside influence. There were examples. The electric bill I had paid twice. The dental appointment I missed. The time I took the wrong exit driving to a new specialist's office. The night I left the garage door open until morning. Every mistake was real. That was what made it so effective. I sat down slowly. What if they're right? Kieran frowned. About what? I've been forgetting things. Your wife died 3 weeks ago. That doesn't mean my mind is fine. No, but making mistakes does not mean someone else gets your house. I looked again at the petition. One line said I had become suspicious of family members due to grief. It was clever. If I accused them, the accusation itself could be used as proof that I was unstable. Carol had understood that before I did. Another folder contained the name Marianne Doyle and a phone number. Below it, Carol had typed, asterisk, asterisk, call her before confronting anyone. Ray will want to confront them. Don't let him dot asterisk, asterisk. I almost smiled. She knew me. Kieran handed me my phone. I called Marianne. She answered on the 3rd ring. Doyle Law Office. Marianne, this is Ray Mercer. There was a short pause. Then her voice changed. Ray, are you alone? I looked at Kieran. Close enough. Did you find Carol's files? That question hit me almost as hard as the video. You knew? She contacted me several weeks before she died. She had concerns, but not enough verified evidence to take formal action. Why didn't you tell me? Because she was my client, Ray, and because she believed you would go straight to Natalie and Brent. She was right. I know. Marianne asked us to describe what we had found. As I spoke, her questions became shorter and more specific. Did the loan application include a lender? Was there a notary? Were there emails showing Natalie supplied the documents? Had any money been released? When I finished, she said, do not sign anything. Do not accuse them. Do not let them know you have counsel. That sounds a lot like doing nothing. It is not nothing. It is staying in control. Kieran found one more file while I was on the phone. An automated email scheduled by Carol. It was addressed to him. He read it silently, then turned the screen toward me. Carol explained how she had met Kieran at the community center. She wrote that he had once helped an elderly man recover documents from a damaged phone and had refused payment. She trusted him because he knew the difference between helping someone and taking control from them. The final paragraph was about me. Asterisk, asterisk. Ray is a good man. When someone he loves hurts him, he tries to repair the relationship before he protects himself. Please help him do those things in the right order. Asterisk, asterisk. I read it twice. Then Marianne asked for the name of the bank. Kieran enlarged the application. Chase, I said. Marianne called its fraud department while we stayed on speakerphone. There were transfers, hold music, security questions. Finally, a representative came on and confirmed that an application connected to my property existed. Marianne asked whether it was still pending. The representative hesitated. It has passed preliminary underwriting. My mouth went dry. What does that mean? I asked. It means, Marianne said carefully, the loan is not just paperwork sitting in a folder. The representative continued. The application had been approved subject to one final condition. A notarized property authorization. Once that was received, the funds could be released. I looked at the unsigned documents on the screen. They were not planning something for later. They were almost finished. Marianne told me not to go home and start making calls. That was exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to call Natalie and ask her how many times she had sat across from me while knowing there was a loan against my house. I wanted to drive to Brent's office, put the forged papers on his desk, and watch him explain them without all his polished real estate language. Instead, Marianne gave me an address. Dr. Samuel Price, she said. You've seen him for years, correct? 17. Good. Call his office first thing tomorrow. Tell them you need a cognitive assessment and a written statement regarding your capacity. I stared at the loan application on the screen. You think they can actually have me declared incompetent? I think they can try, and if they file first, you don't want your first response to be anger. I am angry. I know. That is why I'm telling you this now. Kieran closed the laptop. You should eat something, he said. I'm not hungry. That is not the same as not needing food. It sounded like something Carol would have said, which irritated me enough that I agreed. We walked to a small cafe inside the library. Kieran bought coffee. I bought a turkey sandwich I barely touched. My phone buzzed twice. Both messages were from Natalie. Asterisk, asterisk, Dad. Call me when you get home. Asterisk, asterisk. Then, asterisk, asterisk, Brent, and I want to stop by tomorrow. We found someone who can help with everything. Asterisk, asterisk. I showed Marianne the messages when she arrived. She was a compact woman with silver-streaked hair and the kind of calm expression that made you feel foolish for speaking too loudly. Don't cancel, she said. You want me to let them come? I want to know what they bring. The next morning, I sat in Dr. Price's office, trying not to feel insulted by a sheet of paper with a clock printed on it. He had been my doctor long enough to remember when I still ran 3 miles before work. Now he watched me write numbers around a circle. Put the hands at 10 past 11, he said. I did. Then came 5 words to remember. Face, velvet, church, daisy, red. He asked me what day it was, who the president was, and where we were. Then he made me count backward by 7s. I got to 72, hesitated, and lost the sequence. My stomach tightened. Dr. Price moved on without reacting. A few minutes later, he asked for the 5 words. I remembered 4. Daisy, I said. Church, red face. I stared at the floor. The other one was velvet, he said. That's not exactly reassuring. Ray, you haven't slept properly in weeks. You lost your wife less than a month ago. Grief affects concentration. So does dementia. Yes, and this evaluation does not indicate dementia. He took off his glasses. You are sad. You are exhausted. You are angry. None of that means you are incapable of managing your affairs. I nodded, but the fear stayed with me. That was the worst part. Natalie and Brent had chosen accusations close enough to my real life that I could not dismiss them completely. I had forgotten appointments. I had paid bills twice. I had stood in my own garage one morning, unable to remember why I had gone out there. For one ugly minute in Dr. Price's office, I wondered whether I was fighting to keep control I had already started losing. He must have seen something in my face. Ray, he said, needing help sometimes is not the same as needing someone else to own your decisions. That sentence followed me home. Natalie arrived at 2 in the afternoon. Brent came with her, carrying a leather folder. The third person was a woman in her late 50s, wearing a cream-colored coat and a bright professional smile. This is Sheila Barnes, Natalie said. She helps families with senior transitions. Sheila took both my hands. Ray, do you understand why we're here today? She said it slowly and loudly. I pulled one hand free. I understood it the first time. I was waiting to see whether you did. Her smile held, but only barely. We sat around the kitchen table. Brent put the folder in front of me and tapped it twice. We're just trying to simplify things, he said. Bills, insurance, property maintenance. Natalie can take some of that weight off you. I've been paying bills since before you could grow that beard. He gave a small laugh. That's not the point. What is the point? He opened the packet to the first page. This is a limited authorization. I read the heading. It did look limited. The first page allowed Natalie to speak with utility providers and insurance companies. Then I turned to the next page. The language changed. Real property, investment accounts, borrowing authority, medical decisions. I looked up. Why does helping with the gas bill involve selling my house? Brent stopped tapping his finger. It doesn't, that's standard language. Then cross it out. Sheila leaned toward me. Ray, sometimes too many details can feel overwhelming. I looked at her. Not as overwhelming as signing away my house. Natalie stared at the table. Brent moved quickly to another folder and slid a glossy brochure in front of me. It showed smiling, gray-haired couples playing cards in a bright room. We found a place near Westerville, he said. Meals, transportation, activities, people in your stage of life. I turned the brochure over. The monthly cost was just under $6,000. That must be some excellent bingo. Natalie almost smiled. Brent did not. You would not have to worry about the house anymore, he said. What happens to it? We'd explore options. What options? Ray, this is about protecting you. From what? He looked at Natalie. She finally spoke. From making a big decision while you're grieving. I leaned back. There it was again. Not cruel enough to challenge. Soft enough to sound loving. Brent pushed the pen toward me. We need to finish this today. Why? It keeps everything moving. What is moving? Our financial planning. Whose finances? His jaw tightened. I let the silence sit. That was something I had learned as an inspector. Contractors hated silence. If you stopped talking, they usually filled the space with something useful. Brent looked at his watch. The timing matters. Natalie rubbed her thumb across the edge of her wedding ring. The bank needs it by Friday, Dad. Brent turned toward her. Natalie. I looked directly at her. Which bank? She hesitated. Brent said, that isn't relevant. Then it should be easy to answer. Natalie swallowed. Chase. Nobody moved for a second. Then Sheila began talking about family cooperation. I barely heard her. The loan was real, the deadline was real, and my daughter had just confirmed it in my kitchen. I closed the folder. My attorney will review this. Brent's expression changed. You hired an attorney? I said my attorney will review it. Who is filling your head with this? There was the anger Marianne had predicted, not mine. His. Sheila placed a hand on his arm. Natalie stood. Can I talk to Dad alone? Brent did not like it, but he and Sheila stepped into the backyard. Through the window, I watched Brent point toward Carol's garden while talking with both hands. Natalie stayed by the table. Their old habits were still there. When she was nervous, she tucked her hair behind her left ear. She did it twice. Brent's company is in trouble, she said. How much trouble? Our mortgage is behind. Payroll is tight. One development got delayed. And my house fixes that? For a little while. You knew about the loan. She looked away. It was supposed to be temporary. So was the signature temporary? Her face tightened. I didn't sign your name. That is not what I asked. Brent said everything would be repaid. Brent says a lot. She started crying, but quietly. No performance. Just tears she wiped away with the side of her hand. You've always said family takes care of family. I looked toward the garden. Taking care of family is not the same as taking their choices. Mom wanted us to stay together. That did it. I looked back at her. Do not use your mother to sell me this. She flinched. For a second, I saw the little girl who used to cry when she disappointed us. Then the back door opened and Brent came in. The moment was gone. They left without the signatures. Afterward, Marianne came by and took the packet. She read every page. The first page is harmless, she said. The rest gives Natalie broad control over nearly everything. So he was hoping I'd stop reading. He was hoping grief would make you easier to rush. Kieran arrived a little later with the laptop. He had found a second video from Carol. We played it at the kitchen table. She looked weaker than in the first recording. I confronted Natalie, she said. She cried. She said Brent was under pressure. I wanted to believe that meant she would stop him. Carol paused and pressed her fingers against her chest. Then she looked into the camera. But wanting to believe your child is not the same as knowing it. The recording ended suddenly. No goodbye. No final instruction. Just Carol reaching toward the screen. I sat there staring at the empty frame. The next morning, Marianne called before 8. The bank had flagged the transfer. For 1 second, I thought that meant we had stopped it. Then she continued. Brent had already scheduled an appraisal of my property. He had submitted documents claiming I had agreed to move into assisted living. Someone had also requested that my mail be redirected to Natalie's address. They had not taken the house yet, but they were already practicing life as if I no longer belonged in it. The first call came just after 9 the next morning. Mr. Mercer, this is Midwest Moving. We're confirming your packing appointment for Thursday. I frowned. I think you've got the wrong number. We're scheduled to prepare your relocation before your move to Maple Ridge Senior Living. I never scheduled a move. The woman apologized, sounded genuinely confused, and promised to check her paperwork. I hung up. 10 minutes later, another call came. This one was from the senior living community itself. By lunchtime, a utility company wanted to discuss transferring service. Around 2 o'clock, someone from the county assessor's office asked whether I would be available for a property inspection the following week. Every conversation ended the same way. I never agreed to that. By themselves, they sounded like clerical mistakes. Together, they felt like someone quietly erasing my life one form at a time. I called Marianne. They're building a paper trail, she said. What does that mean? It means they want every company involved to believe this transition is already happening. So by the time I object, you'll look like the confused old man changing his story. I leaned back in my kitchen chair. That's clever. It's dangerous. That afternoon, I walked out to collect the mail. Tom Hensley was trimming bushes across the street. He waved. Morning, Ray. Afternoon. He laughed. You've officially retired if you don't know what time it is. I've earned that right. He walked over, holding his hedge clippers. Hey, Natalie said you might be moving. I felt something tighten in my chest. She said that? She mentioned you were looking at one of those retirement communities. I forced a smile. We're discussing options. Well, hate to lose my best poker loser. I was never that bad. You absolutely were. He laughed again and headed back across the street. I watched him go. Tom had lived opposite us for 26 years. He wasn't gossiping. He honestly believed my daughter. That hurt more than I expected. By evening, the kitchen table had disappeared beneath stacks of paper. Insurance statements, tax returns, property records. Carol had always known exactly where everything belonged. I kept opening drawers that no longer made sense. Passwords, policy numbers, receipts. Every folder reminded me how much of our marriage had been built on quiet teamwork I barely noticed until it disappeared. Around 7, I found myself staring at Brent's authorization packet again. The signature line looked almost inviting. One signature, one decision. Maybe the fighting would stop. Maybe Natalie really believed she'd put everything back once Brent's project recovered. Maybe preserving the relationship mattered more than preserving the house. I picked up the pen. Before it touched the paper, someone knocked on the front door. Kieran. He held 2 paper bags. I brought dinner. I'm not hungry. I didn't ask. I opened the door anyway. 5 minutes later, we were sitting at the kitchen table eating meatloaf from a diner on Sawmill Road. Mine had already gone cold. Kieran noticed the documents. You were thinking about signing. I was thinking about ending this. He nodded. I understand. No, you don't. My grandfather almost signed away farmland after my grandmother died. That surprised me. You never mentioned that. He believed his oldest son would protect everyone. What happened? My grandfather finally asked an attorney to read the papers. And? They weren't protection. What were they? A transfer. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Finally, Kieran looked at Carol's handwriting on one of the folders. Mrs. Mercer didn't save all of this because paperwork is important. Then why? Because she believed you were. I looked down at the unsigned authorization. I am so tired. I know. I'm tired of lawyers. I know. I'm tired of thinking my own daughter could actually do this. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he pushed the folder farther away from me. You don't have to decide tonight. That simple sentence broke something inside me. Not dramatically. Not with tears. Just enough that I finally admitted the truth. I miss my wife. I know. I don't know how to do this without her. Kieran smiled sadly. I don't think she expected you to. The next morning, Marianne filed an emergency request preventing any transfer or new lien involving my property until the fraud investigation could be reviewed. She also contacted Detective Rosa Alvarez. The detective met us that afternoon. She wasn't what I expected. No television attitude. No dramatic speeches. She carried a legal pad instead of a laptop and listened far more than she talked. When I finished explaining everything, she asked only one question. Mr. Mercer, do you want justice or do you want revenge? I blinked. Aren't they the same thing? They often aren't. She folded her notebook shut. If you threaten Brent, yell at Natalie, or start posting accusations online, their attorney will argue you're emotionally unstable. I'm supposed to do nothing? I'm asking you to stay disciplined. She looked directly at me. They've already described you on paper. I knew what she meant. The angry old widower. Confused. Paranoid. Hard to reason with. If I became that man in public, even for one afternoon, Brent would use it. I can stay calm, I said. You'll need to. No. That evening, Natalie called. Her voice sounded almost cheerful. Dad? Hi. I've been thinking. So have I. I feel awful about yesterday. I waited. I think Brent came on too strong. That wasn't an apology. It was a weather report. I've also been thinking maybe you should understand the project better. What project? Mercer Grove. There was a pause. Brent wants to walk you through everything personally. I almost said no. Then I remembered what Detective Alvarez had told me. Stay disciplined. I'll come. She sounded relieved. Great. Tomorrow morning? Fine. When I hung up, Marianne nodded. Good. You wanted me to accept. I wanted Brent to keep talking. Cole Urban Partners occupied the third floor of a modern office building near downtown Columbus. From the lobby, it looked successful. Glass walls, large logo, fresh coffee. The sort of place that impressed investors. But I had spent 40 years inspecting buildings. You notice details after that long. Half the cubicles were empty. One printer displayed a bright orange maintenance warning. A young employee carried a cardboard box toward the elevator. Another quietly removed framed certificates from a conference room wall. The business looked polished. The people looked nervous. Brent greeted me with both hands. Ray, glad you came. He led me into the conference room. A large rendering of Mercer Grove covered one wall. He smiled proudly. This is going to transform the neighborhood. I studied it silently. Then I found my house, or rather, the empty space where it used to be. The entrance road curved directly across my property. The backyard where Carol planted flowers every spring had become decorative landscaping. Brent stood beside the rendering. We even named it Mercer Grove. I looked at him. Why? To honor your family's legacy. My wife spent 23 years building that garden. And now hundreds of families will enjoy. Did Carol approve this? His answer came too quickly. Absolutely. I stared at him. Carol had spent her final spring sitting on a folding chair because chemotherapy made it impossible to kneel. She still insisted on deadheading every flower herself. She once told me, when I'm gone, promise me you'll let them bloom one more season. She never would have approved bulldozers. Brent kept talking. Something about community. Something about long-term value. I barely heard him. He had just lied about my wife. Not about money. About her. The meeting ended 20 minutes later. As I walked toward my truck, I realized something had changed. Until that morning, part of me still hoped Brent had manipulated Natalie into a terrible mistake. Now I understood something else. Brent didn't just want my property. He wanted to rewrite my family's story, and he was willing to use Carol's memory to sell it. I wasn't angry anymore. I was finished doubting myself. 2 mornings later, I stepped outside wearing pajama pants, slippers, and Carol's old fleece jacket to grab the newspaper before making coffee. The cold hit me immediately. I picked up the paper, turned around, entered my code. The smart lock beeped. Red light. Access denied. I tried again. Red. I walked to the garage. Same result. My phone. My wallet. My keys. Everything was inside. A light rain began falling. Across the living room window, one of Carol's table lamps switched on automatically. She had programmed it years ago. The house looked warm. Lived in. Safe. And I couldn't get inside. For the first time in my life, I was locked out of the home I had spent 32 years paying for. I stood under the porch light trying the code again, even though I already knew it would not work. Red light. Access denied. The rain was picking up, fine and cold, the kind that got through clothes without looking serious. I crossed the yard toward Tom Hensley's house in slippers. He opened the door before I knocked. Ray, I need to borrow a screwdriver. He looked past me toward my house. You locked out? Apparently by committee. Tom started to reach for his phone. I'll call Natalie. No. The word came out sharper than I intended. He stopped. I'm sorry, I said, just a screwdriver. Tom disappeared into his garage and returned with a flathead and a flashlight. You want help? I have one bad idea left. I'd rather embarrass myself privately. The basement window was around the back, half hidden behind Carol's dormant hydrangeas. I had promised her for 8 years that I would replace the loose frame. I worked the screwdriver beneath it. The window lifted. Finally, I muttered, a home repair I was smart not to finish. I pushed my legs through first and lowered myself onto a shelf. The shelf tipped. I landed on a cardboard box full of Christmas decorations. Something cracked beneath my knee. When I switched on the basement light, a plastic reindeer stared up at me with one antler missing. Sorry, Rudolph. My phone was on the kitchen counter. I called Marianne before changing out of my wet clothes. Someone changed the smart lock account, I told her. Can you get inside? I'm standing in my kitchen. How? Years of procrastination. I walked toward Carol's small office off the hallway. The door was open. The metal file cabinet was gone. For several seconds, I simply stared at the empty space beside the desk. Then I checked the closet, as if a 4-foot cabinet might somehow be hiding behind her winter coats. Marianne? What? They took the cabinet. She went quiet. What was in it? Carol's will, insurance records, the deed copy, her handwritten notes. Anything else? I opened the bottom desk drawer. Empty. Family pictures, old tax files. Call Detective Alvarez. Don't touch anything more than you already have. I looked at the bare patch in the carpet where the cabinet had stood. They came into my house. Yes. My daughter gave them access. We don't know that yet. I thought about the changed lock account. We know. Detective Alvarez arrived with another officer that afternoon. There was no broken door, no shattered window, no dramatic evidence. That was the point. Whoever removed the cabinet had entered with permission or a valid code. The smart home company confirmed that the primary account had been transferred to Natalie's email address the previous evening. The next morning, Alvarez called again. A camera from a delivery truck parked across the street had captured one of Brent's employees carrying the cabinet out through the garage. The employee told police Natalie had provided a key and said I had approved the removal. I sat at Carol's dining table while Marianne explained the problem. The digital records still matter, she said, but Brent's attorney may claim they were altered after Carol died. What about the videos? Useful, not enough by themselves. So he takes the originals and calls the copies fake. He may try. For the first time since finding the laptop, I felt the plan slipping away. Carol had found the truth. But truth and proof were not the same thing. Then Marianne remembered something. 2 weeks before Carol died, an envelope had arrived at her office marked personal. Marianne had placed it in a locked estate file because Carol told her not to open it unless Ray contacted her. Inside were copies of the loan application, several handwritten pages, and a signed statement. The copies were incomplete. 2 pages were missing. Carol's notes jumped between dates. But the envelope had been postmarked before her death. That mattered. Carol had not built a perfect case. She had simply left enough for us to keep going. Over the next week, the bank froze everything connected to my property. Detective Alvarez also found irregular authorization forms connected to 2 older landowners involved in one of Brent's other developments. This was no longer only about one desperate son-in-law. It was a pattern. Meanwhile, Brent kept promoting Mercer Grove. He scheduled an investor presentation at a downtown Columbus hotel and told city officials the Mercer family had voluntarily contributed the property. Marianne wanted to handle the matter quietly. I agreed with her about the criminal case. But Brent had used my name in public. He had told lenders, neighbors, and investors that I supported his project. If I stayed silent, he would tell them I had changed my mind because grief had made me unstable. I'm going, I told her. To the presentation? Yes. Ray, this cannot become an ambush. I'm not bringing a marching band. You need to stay calm. I've been locked out of my own house in slippers. Calm is becoming a specialty. The morning of the event, I put on the navy suit I had worn to Carol's funeral. Before leaving, I walked into the backyard. The garden looked dead for winter, but Carol's wooden plant markers were still pressed into the soil. Peony, iris, lavender. Her handwriting. I touched one of the markers. I'm not doing this because of bricks, I said quietly. I'm doing it because they decided our life belonged to whoever filled out the forms first. The hotel conference room was already half full when I arrived. Investors in dark suits stood near coffee urns. City staff sat along one wall. A large screen displayed the Mercer Grove logo. Natalie saw me first. Her face drained of color. Brent came over smiling, but his eyes did not match it. "Ray, this isn't the right place. You put my name on the sign." He lowered his voice. "You're embarrassing Natalie. She'll recover." He reached for my elbow. I stepped back. "Don't." People had begun watching. Brent removed his hand. The presentation started 10 minutes later. He spoke smoothly at first. He called Mercer Grove a family-supported development. He described my property as a gracious contribution from longtime Dublin residents. Then the rendering appeared. My house was gone again. The entrance road curved over Carol's kitchen and through her garden. Brent smiled at the audience. "The Mercer family understands the importance of building for the next generation." I raised my hand. Brent's smile froze. "Yes, Ray? Which Mercer agreed to that?" The room went still. He gave a soft laugh. "Ray has had a difficult few months. The family is working through a transition." There it was. The confused widower. I stayed seated. "You've told everyone I can't understand my own affairs," I said. "So explain it slowly. When did I give you my house?" Brent looked toward Natalie. Then Marianne stood. She introduced herself and began passing out a one-page timeline. Forged signature. Disputed loan. Unauthorized appraisal. Mail forwarding request. Smart lock transfer. Removal of Carol's records. Draft guardianship petition. Brent's voice changed. "This is private family material." I looked at the screen behind him. "You put my family name on every slide. Now you don't want family involved?" A few people shifted in their chairs. Marianne asked the hotel technician to play Carol's video. Carol appeared on the screen wearing her blue cardigan. She stated her full name and the date. Then she said she and I had never agreed to transfer our home. She explained that Brent had asked her to persuade me to sign papers connected to Mercer Grove. Near the end, her voice weakened. "Natalie," she said, looking into the camera, "being afraid of losing your marriage does not give you the right to take your father's choices away. Tell the truth before someone else tells it for you." The video stopped. Natalie covered her mouth. Brent leaned toward her. "Don't say anything." She looked at him, then at me. "We were going to put it back," she said. Brent turned sharply. "Natalie." "You said Dad would never know." The room changed. Not loudly, just all at once. Pens stopped moving. An older investor near the front leaned back in his chair. Brent began talking too fast. He said Natalie had misunderstood routine financing. Natalie shook her head. She admitted giving him my tax returns, my license, the smart home account, and the key used to remove the cabinet. "I thought it was temporary," she said. "Temporary theft still begins with taking something that isn't yours." Brent tried to regain control. He clicked back to his projections. Marianne held up an internal planning document obtained during the bank review. At the top were the words, ***, Mercer property, secure control before owner retains counsel, ***. One investor asked for it to be displayed. The hotel technician put it on the screen. Brent called it a draft, then a mistake, then the work of a former employee. An older man near the aisle said, "That language seems remarkably clear." The bank representative announced that all financing tied to my property had been suspended. Two investors stood and left. A city planning official said the development application would be reviewed for material misrepresentation. Detective Alvarez stepped forward and handed Brent an order requiring him to surrender company records and appear for questioning. No handcuffs. No shouting. Just paper. The same thing Brent had used against me. He looked at me. "Ray, we can still fix this. You had months to speak to me." He glanced around the room. "Not here. You chose forms, signatures, and people who would talk over me. You can speak through your attorney now." After the room emptied, Natalie approached. Her mascara had run beneath one eye. "Dad, will you ever forgive me?" I looked at her for a long time. "I don't know." She started crying again. Tay, but before you ask me that, I said, decide whether you're sorry for what you did or only sorry it failed. I left her standing beside the Mercer Grove sign. In the parking garage, I sat alone in my truck. My hands were steady. That surprised me. Kieran called from somewhere nearby. Did it work? I looked at the empty passenger seat. It's over, I said. Then I closed my eyes. But it doesn't feel like winning. The first letter from the bank arrived 3 weeks later. I carried it inside without opening it. For months, every envelope had meant another problem. Another explanation. Another reminder that my own name had nearly been used against me. This one was different. The fraudulent loan had been officially canceled. The temporary lien against my property had been removed. I stood in the kitchen for a long time before setting the letter beside Carol's coffee mug. She had always insisted on reading the mail first. Good news belongs with breakfast, she'd say. I smiled despite myself. You're late this morning. Yuri. The legal process took another 6 months. It wasn't dramatic. It was slow. Depositions, document reviews, bank investigators, insurance interviews. Every few weeks, Marianne would call with another update. One more piece is finished. One more statement has been verified. One more witness has confirmed the timeline. Real justice, I learned, rarely arrives in one spectacular afternoon. It shows up in stacks of paperwork. Brent's company entered bankruptcy before spring. Detective Alvarez later explained that Mercer Grove had never been as financially healthy as Brent claimed. He had been borrowing against future projects to keep older ones alive. When those projects stalled, he became desperate. My house wasn't his first choice. It was simply the easiest. He eventually accepted a plea agreement involving financial fraud and elder exploitation. There were restitution payments, prison time, restrictions that effectively ended his real estate career. When I heard the sentence, I didn't celebrate. I folded the newspaper and made another cup of coffee. Carol would have understood that. She never believed ruined lives repaired damaged ones. Ow! Natalie's case ended differently. She cooperated with investigators. She admitted providing my tax returns, my driver's license, access to the smart home account, the garage key used to remove Carol's file cabinet. Because she had no criminal record and helped recover evidence, she received probation, community service, financial penalties, and mandatory counseling. The judge looked directly at her before announcing the sentence. Love for your spouse does not excuse the exploitation of your parent. Marianne later told me Natalie cried all the way through the hearing. I wasn't there. I couldn't be. Not yet. She sold the luxury SUV that Brent insisted they needed. She moved into a modest apartment near Worthington. The expensive furniture disappeared. Designer handbags showed up online. She found an administrative job with a medical supply company. Nothing glamorous. Just steady work. One evening she called. I'm paying my own electric bill. I waited. I never realized how much everything costs. No, I said quietly. You and Mom never let me. There wasn't any anger in her voice. Only embarrassment. Maybe that was the beginning. Marianne insisted our first meeting happen with a counselor present. Neutral ground. No lawyers. No investigators. Just 3 chairs and too many years of history. Natalie looked older. Not physically. Life had simply caught up with her. She twisted a tissue between both hands. I thought, she began before stopping. What? I thought no matter what happened, she couldn't finish. I helped her. I'd forgive you. She nodded. I always have. That part was true. When she wrecked my truck at 17. When she dropped out of nursing school after 1 semester. When Brent's first business failed. When they couldn't make the mortgage. Every time something collapsed, I stepped in before she hit the ground. Sometimes love quietly teaches the wrong lesson. I looked at my daughter for a long time. I still love you, Natalie. Fresh tears filled her eyes. But love doesn't give anyone access to my house, my money, or my decisions. She stared down at the floor. You'll have to earn my trust back one piece at a time. How long? I thought about Carol, about the hospital room, about the hidden files, about the empty space where her file cabinet had once stood. Longer than signing a form. She nodded. For once, she accepted an answer without arguing. Over the next several months, our relationship remained awkward. Some Sundays we met for lunch. Other weeks we didn't speak. Occasionally she'd call just to ask how my knees were doing. Sometimes I'd answer. Sometimes I'd let it go to voicemail. Healing wasn't a straight road. Neither of us pretended otherwise. One decision surprised almost everyone. I updated my estate plan. Natalie wasn't removed completely. She was still my daughter. But any inheritance would now pass through a professionally managed trust. Marianne became my designated legal advocate if I ever lost capacity. No single family member could control my finances, property, or medical decisions without independent oversight. I also organized every password, every insurance policy, every account, every instruction. One afternoon I laughed while labeling folders. Carol had spent 30 years trying to convince me to organize paperwork. She finally succeeded after she was gone. I heard that, I said toward the empty kitchen. I stayed in the house for another year, not because I couldn't leave, because I refused to let fear make the decision. The stairs eventually became harder on my knees. The yard demanded more work than I wanted to give it. One spring afternoon, I walked through every room. Natalie's childhood bedroom. The hallway where we'd marked her height with pencil every birthday. The kitchen where Carol danced while making pancakes. Our bedroom. The place where I held her hand during the last week of her life. Outside, the peonies had returned. They always did. The buyers were a young couple expecting their second child. During the final walkthrough, the wife pointed toward the backyard. I love these flowers. They belong to my wife. We'll take care of them. Maybe they would. Maybe they wouldn't. That promise belonged to them now. The choice belonged to me. I moved into a smaller condominium near Shoto Park. No stairs. One floor. A secure garage. Enough room for the dining table, Carol's favorite chair, and several plants from the old garden. It felt smaller. It also felt peaceful. The scholarship was Kiran's idea. No, he corrected me. Mrs. Mercer started it. We used part of the proceeds from selling the house to establish the Carol Mercer Memorial Scholarship for international students studying technology, cybersecurity, or financial protection. Nothing enormous. Just enough to help someone stay in school when life became complicated. The first award went to a graduate student from Nepal. Kiran happened to know him. A week after graduation, I handed Kiran a new laptop. He looked at the unopened box suspiciously. There aren't hidden files on this one, are there? I laughed. Only the receipt. That afternoon, he video called his parents. He asked me to sit beside him. His mother smiled warmly through the screen. His father thanked me for helping their son. I shook my head. Carol started all of this. His mother pressed her hands together. Then thank you for continuing it. For the first time since losing my wife. That didn't feel impossible. On the first anniversary of Carol's death, I opened the hidden folder one last time. I watched her first video from beginning to end. This time I paid less attention to the warning. Instead, I noticed how tired she looked. How carefully she chose every sentence because breathing had become difficult. There was one final recording I had never opened. It wasn't about Brent, or Natalie, or the house. It lasted less than a minute. Ray, she said softly, being kind doesn't require you to be defenseless. She smiled. Protect yourself first. A small cough interrupted her. Then decide what kind of man you still want to be. The screen faded to black. I closed the laptop. The investigation files stayed with Marianne. The evidence no longer belonged in my living room. The anger no longer belonged there either. People sometimes ask whether I got revenge. I usually tell them no. Revenge suggests I wanted someone else to lose. What I really wanted was something much simpler. I wanted to keep my own voice, my own home, my own choices. Growing older doesn't mean surrendering your judgment, and loving your family should never require giving away your dignity. If you've ever had to choose between keeping the peace and protecting yourself, I hope you know you're not alone. Thank you for spending this time with me.